over the last few years since I started watching Indian cinema, I noticed a few trends that I feel like have been true for a while. That there's been a disproportionate amount of attention towards Hindi cinema, and a lot of the other regional cinemas kind of go hardly unnoticed. And despite the regional audiences being large enough themselves, certain films just don't break into the masses. For example, Arjun Reddy was a nice Telugu movie that didn't really break out of the region despite its success. However, it garnered enough attention to spawn the remake. Cut to November 2020. And there's no more theaters really that are open presenting brand new films. Akshay's film came out in video on demand, and so did today's film that I'll be reviewing, Soorarai Pottru. Those latest films are going by the day to video on demand, or going the streaming route, whether it's via Hotstar, or Amazon, or Netflix, whatever the case may be. This is how Indian audiences are consuming new content. And as a result, more eyes are being fixated on these pieces of cinema than ever before. And as a result, a movie like Soorarai Pottru can shine through to people who maybe never would have watched it in the theater. The thing I loved the most about Soorarai Pottru is the film never once talks down to you. It never once treats you like a child or like someone who's not smart enough to understand what's going on. Yes, you have your moments of exposition. Yes, you have your common tropes of cinema, things that you can cling on to. You have the classic story of little guy versus the big business, big whatever, that's just little man versus big whatever, David versus Goliath. And at the core of the film, that's what it is. It never really gets far away from that, and that's a good thing. And so even when there's singing and dancing and levity and comedy intermixed with the serious and dramatic moments, there's a very consistent tone throughout the film. At no point do you have Surya going into the airports and just beating everybody up and throwing people through windows, and it's not your typical Southern affair. We've all seen this movie before, but the thing that the movie does well is the cast of characters are likable enough. We see enough of them to appreciate the relationships, the bonds, the struggles that go on. We can empathize with the characters. And I was a little skeptical at first because when the movie starts, it throws you right into the mix. And it starts with the plane, the CGI plane, and I'm out of fuel, goddammit. Like, you kind of don't know what's going on, and it kind of just felt weird to me. And then Bhumi comes, who eventually becomes Mara's wife, and her dialogue, and just the way she presented herself, and just her whole aesthetic, her whole look. Not some stereotypical supermodel actress. And instead, it just felt real and grounded. And this is a woman that I feel like you would see and that someone would fall in love with. And the way she's portrayed is great. She has snappy dialogue. She knows what she wants. She's very demanding at the negotiations at this, when the bride and groom meet and they have the whole family dinner. And I love that whole dynamic. I want to have a bakery, and what's mine is mine and yours is yours. But towards the end, it swaps, but because the reality is what's theirs is theirs. And that dynamic just worked. I liked how she denied the marriage, and instead he went and did his own thing, but then they kind of circled back together. But yet the film didn't go down that path of being a love story rom-com, because the film was always about him bringing flight to India for a cheap price, and the film never gets away from that. It doesn't let the love story get involved to the point where I wanted more of those interactions because they were so good. It almost feels like Bhumi needs her own spin-off show or something. I'll watch a cooking show with her, or a bakery show with her, or whatever that is, as a movie, as a TV series, because I just love that whole character. And that world doesn't get explored because, of course, that's not what this film is about. Did I wish there was more? Absolutely, because it was just so well written. And it wasn't just the bakery aspect, but also just the way she interacted with her family as well. Something about the way she was written and the way the character performed and the way the performance was done, it just clicked and registered for me, and honestly was one of the strong backbones of the film that made me, if I ever felt like, oh, this is going off in a different direction, the film would somehow bring me a scene involving her and it would write me right back into the moment and where I'd go right into it. And the film, I have to admit, definitely pulled some good dramatic punches. His flashback and the way that scene was handled, where it was done in longer takes, where it allows you to watch him break down and beg for money for that plane ticket home. But again, that there's long shots where you see him looking for someone because he's panicking, he's freaking out, and you're with him in the moment. In huge contrast to Lakshmi, a movie I watched last week, where it's just cutting every 5 seconds. This film takes your intelligence level seriously, because the director is confident that you as an audience member will understand what's going on. And because of that, things are just more impactful. And directly after that scene where you have him finally getting home after going through this long trek via car and bus and all of these things to finally get home, you have that very intense and dramatic. I mean, it made me cry. I'm not even gonna lie. That whole bit with the mother and the son, and he's just in tears. And again, it's like 2 or 3 shots for that entire scene. It wasn't over stylized. You didn't have anything over dramatic. You had some slow motion, but you also had just singles of the mother, and she put on a phenomenal performance as well. Very believable. So even though the film definitely becomes very villainous at certain moments and stereotypical, where you have the big business guy looking down at the little guy in his big office with the very dramatic lighting in those moments, they still worked because of the characters involved, because they felt like a presence. They felt like a villain in the film, despite the fact that, yes, things were a little bit probably over dramatic and dramatized, of course, like everything else, but it's a movie. And because of that, I was entertained. And by the time the film ended, I was extremely satisfied, as a matter of fact. I had gripes throughout the movie, don't get me wrong, but to be honest, to sit there and reflect on them when you have so much other positive things, I just wish there was more movies like this. And I don't mean about airports and airplanes and things like that, but just movies that took you serious and also took the subject matter serious. And because the film never takes away from the film's Indianness, it's something that makes me happy. It's not a carbon copy of something else. It's its own unique thing, even though it includes other tropes, like I said, that are just across all of cinema. And we all like it because they're just common storytelling tropes. Good versus evil. And at the end of the day, good wins. And I left satisfied. So would I recommend this movie? Absolutely. If you haven't checked it out and you have Amazon, there's no reason why you shouldn't give this movie a shot. If you don't have Amazon and you watch movies through other means, well, give it a shot, because I'm sure you were going to give it a shot anyway. And for those of you who watched it and didn't like it, let me know in the comments why. And for those who watched it and did like it, what were your favorite scenes? So please just support everybody and give this film a shot, because I feel like there needs to be more films like this. Again, films that take you as a viewer, me as a viewer, seriously, take the subject matter seriously, take the tone seriously. The tone is 100% consistent, and that's why the movie works, because it's just pretty consistent. But anyway, that'll do it for this one. I will see you on the next one.